welcome to the Silhouettes of Success podcast with your host, successful entrepreneur, broker, and business mentor, Amber Weitzer. Because success comes in all shapes, sizes, and styles, the Silhouettes of Success podcast is shining the light on industrious women with a collection of curated conversations of intentional inspiration designed to inspire your heart, ignite your mind, feed your soul, and gift you with actionable insights directly from inspirational, everyday women who've shown tenacity, grit, and grace, having taken on the challenges in their lives and business and won. Remarkable, down-to-earth, and relatable, Amber and her guests will share with you uplifting and extraordinary real-life success stories, motivational ideas that just might help spark something within you. With the deepest desire to serve you, help you grow so you can begin to shine the light that will illuminate your very own silhouette of success. So, let's get to it.
Hello and welcome to the Amber Weitzer podcast, Silhouettes of Success. Our VIP featured guest is a former hustle culture devotee, ex-chief market officer, and the Wall Street Journal's poster girl for pandemic burnout. She is a two-time member of the Great Resignation class of 2021 and 2022. Silhouettes, there's a story there. She's on a journey to explore the similar stories, breaking points, and defining moments that led women to seek greater opportunity mid-pandemic. These conversations became the genesis of Raze to Rise, an organization she created to amplify women's voices from the Great Resignation and inspire others to blaze new trails in their own careers. I am so happy and excited for her to be here with us, Silhouettes. So please help me welcome Sara McElroy to the show. Sara, hello, we need you. How are you?
I am doing well, Amber. Thank you so much for having me here. Oh my gosh, I tell you, the more I talk about all of this with other women, the more I realize just how much we have an opportunity to lift each other up around these particular topics these days.
Yes, indeed. All right. It is a genuine pleasure and treat and all those other things we can think of to say. So let's just kick it off by having you share and help illustrate the shaping of your silhouette of success by talking a little bit about your background with our audience.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I'll start where the journey began most recently, which was back in 2020 when the pandemic hit. I was working for a global hospitality company and I was actually moved onto the COVID response task force within about a month of lockdown hitting. And then within a month of moving on to that team that's already really moving quite quickly and working additional hours, of course, to support the organization and our hotels through a very uncertain time and figuring out how to best take care of guests. I also then had 80% of the team I was on furloughed. And so I was still around and my boss was still around, but the additional 7 members on our team were not going to be working for the summer. So it was just going to be the two of us picking up the slack in addition to working on this COVID response team. And, it's one of those things where I'm so grateful to still be working and being able to contribute and support the hotels. But at the same time, I was also doing an executive MBA program and just feeling like, man, I don't know how I'm going to juggle all of this extra workload plus that MBA program. Well, it so happened that I had an executive recruiter reach out during that same time, and I landed a job as a chief marketing officer for a private equity-backed wellness concept that was scaling nationally. And of course, that's the dream. That was the dream on paper to reach the C-suite. And so I jumped at that opportunity. But then between work and school, and trying to balance both of those things, I found myself working up to 20 hours a day. Now, not every single day, but I was pushing it to the brink, thinking this will all come to a close once I graduate. It's going to be okay, but I just have to push through for now. Now, during that time, I started to see some breakdown in my well-being because of all of this really just over the top pushing. And I ended up in the ER a couple times after episodes of throwing up blood. And I slowed down a bit. I graduated from school. I cut back on my hours, but I was still struggling. And finally, in April 2021, I was diagnosed with shingles. And as I'm sitting in the doctor's office and the doctor tells me that indeed I do have shingles, I was overjoyed, which is such a strange thing to say and admit. But I was overjoyed because I was going to have 10 straight days off of work. And it was for a socially acceptable reason. No one would be able to question it or tell me that I couldn't take that time to heal. And in that moment, I realized I needed to do something different because that's not a normal response to being told you have an illness that could potentially lead to things like blindness and paralysis. So have so much compassion for that version of me. And I'm really proud of her that she had the self-awareness to say, this isn't quite right. And we need to do some things differently. So it was really like, I'm going to hit the life reset button. I had another job come through that was down in Florida during that time. And I ended up relocating down here where I am currently by the beach, and decided I'm going to prioritize my well-being and little bits of joy every single day. So I got this tiny place on the water. I cut back on work even more, really kind of combining my hours and keeping them tight into sort of that 8 to 5 window as much as I could. And then I was doing a lot of yoga and meditation and trying to just heal from that burnout that I'd experienced, but it wasn't healing. And I couldn't figure out why, because it's like the internet tells us all these platitudes and things to do related to self-care and boundaries and all of that good stuff. It's great. But what I didn't realize is that I was walking into this new organization every day that had an extremely misogynistic culture and was dealing with a sexual harassment situation that wasn't being properly addressed for months. And that was just like a paper cut on my nascently healing burnout wound. And finally, they did an investigation related to these issues in January. And it was just such a check the box, really perfunctory investigation that ultimately I put in my notice the next day. And I didn't just put in my notice, I sent this blistering anti-harassment resignation letter to not only my boss in HR, but the CEO as well. And I took my laptop into the office. I'm trembling as I have my finger over the send button, and I hit send and I walk out the door. I didn't give 2 weeks or anything. So it has been a journey. And the real piece of it for me that is interesting is that I was that good girl. I was the keep your head down. I will run the corporate playbook. I will do all the things that are asked of me. I will outwork anyone, and I am that good girl. But then I find myself on the opposite side of these two back-to-back career quote unquote failures, and I am just reeling. And that's how I ended up founding Raze to Rise, like you mentioned at the beginning of this.
Wow. Everybody take a big inhale, exhale. So, this is, oh my goodness. Okay. All right. So sometimes we do this, and this is going to be one of those times. The script is now out the window.
Okay. Can work with that. You know what? I threw my life script out the window the last 2 years, Amber, so I'm here for it.
Love that. Oh my gosh. And, it's interesting. So, all right. So I'm going to go back over a couple of the points that you talked about. And let's just vibe off of those and just take those where we take those. Interesting that I really value the respect that you give yourself for going back and being appreciative of her, the self that you were at that time when you were grateful about the diagnosis. That is so backwards. And how come we do seek? I had a conversation, and this is so interesting. I think that's why my brain just went shift because I had a conversation yesterday and somebody mentioned that. I wish, it wasn't in the context of, I want it. But during the pandemic, there was an automatic timeout for everybody, whether it was, good, bad, just horrible. Some people welcomed the time out until it extended, of course, don't get me wrong. But similar to what you had with your, your diagnosis and wanting, being a little relieved to have those 10 days that nobody could argue with you about, that you were just going to hit the pause button, but that we needed that because we get into such a tailspin, sometimes it's like, oh, I wish I could just get, XYZ and just have 10 days off or 5 days off. What in your explorations now that you have embarked on this journey and talked to all of these different women in your Raze to Rise stories, what are you hearing about that? And how do you, now that you've gone through all of that and come out on the other side with better clarity and awareness, how do you talk to women about that?
Well, it's been fascinating to hear the stories of other women related to how the the way our world was upended with the pandemic really shifted things for them. And it did, to your point, it gave us a chance to stop running on the hamster wheel. In a lot of ways, we were doing it just mindlessly. It was very automatic, and only having, a couple days off every weekend and the occasional vacation here and there wasn't really enough for us to stop, pause, get still, and actually start to ask ourselves if the things that we were doing were what we really wanted, or if we had just kind of fallen into them. Were they still good for us anymore? Because that happens too sometimes, that certain things are good for us in different seasons of life, but it changes. And so a lot of them speak to that slowdown and that ability to reflect that came as a bit of a silver lining to the pandemic, because to your point, obviously it was really horrible in a lot of ways for so many people, obviously, but that was a little bit of a gift that it gave us. And now we are able to take steps when we do that deeper internal work and that conscious questioning and coming to actually take inventory of our lives and our careers and to think about, what do I want to create moving forward? It is a huge opportunity that we've been given to do that, and that's what I think so many more women are doing now. So what I take from the stories from the women that I talked to as part of the Great Resignation, they certainly were thinking about reprioritizing, looking at what matters most, finding ways to make work fit for them and fitting their careers into their lives versus the other way around. And I think we can learn from them just as much as from my story as well, that time and effort of sitting with where you are and actually asking yourself some tough questions is a really powerful exercise that's worthwhile.
Yes, and taking the time, giving yourself permission. I talk about that a lot. I think
Yes.
many of us do, and I have permission slips that I give to friends, and because we have to celebrate. I say we have to celebrate the many successes too, whether it's
Yes.
sometimes just getting through the day, an appointment, or whether it's just it's massive success for the individual. But we have to take time and really look at things and give ourselves permission to take a moment or two or
Yes.
10 minutes or block an hour, right?
Absolutely. I agree, and I struggled with that the most, and that was exactly the point when I'm sitting there in the doctor's office and I am grateful that he's given me permission to rest and take time off. I couldn't give that same permission to myself because in my mind, my warped reality saw that as, if I were to take just the time for myself, that would be weak. That would be showing the people at my organization that I couldn't keep up. And I was already trying to prove myself in that organization. I was the youngest member on the executive team, and I took my lumps. Actually, it was a pretty disheartening experience for a lot of it, where other people on the team were kind of lying and backstabbing and breaking each other down. So the last thing that I want to do is to give myself permission to rest or to say, I need a break from this. And so that's why I was so grateful at that time. But we certainly learn from those moments when we can, to your point, slow down a little bit, pause, and then do some real self reflection. It can be just absolutely beautiful in moments of breakdown to guide us in a better, healthier direction for us.
There is a strong, I don't know if it's just the way it always was, but when you're able to do that, it is so liberating and so freeing. And a lot of times, would you perhaps agree that looking back, I feel that's in my, and I'll tell you, very similar to your example, a business coach of mine once said, okay, you need to block off Sundays. You take Sundays off because, like you, I was in the grind and in the
Mm,
mindset. I love how you just said warped, reality of that.
yes.
Um, but looking back, as soon as she gave me permission, just like the doctor gave you, which I have never done for myself, nobody cared. Nobody ever asked me, why aren't you working on a Sunday? But it was on my calendar, so it was
Mm,
blocked. But just isn't that crazy that we allow ourselves to have that? Just hanging
yes,
over us. So
exactly.
so how about you give the audience permission right now? Give them that permission to take the time for themselves.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. It is the greatest gift that you can give yourself is and I love that idea of the open permission slips. I've gone in that direction too, but permission to slow down, to rest, to think about what you want out of life and what makes you happy. Because I think as women too, we have grown up being taught that we are to put others' needs first. We are to not rock the boat in a lot of ways, to stay small, to be loyal, to be obedient, and all of these things that we like to think that the world is certainly becoming more equal when it comes to gender differences, but there are these undercurrents that still hang around and are deeply ingrained into our societal fabric, and it becomes caught up in even in our subconscious operating. And so the more that we can be conscious about giving ourselves that permission to be whatever it is, to live the life that we want for us, in addition to giving ourselves a break when we need it, the more that we're consciously approaching all of those things, the better off we'll be.
Beautiful, poetically beautiful.
Well,
Yes,
thank
yes,
you.
yes.
I
So
learned the hard
yeah,
way though. That's the thing here, and that's okay, right? That's okay if we learn in the mess, in the muck. Sometimes that is the only way to learn and to get us to wake up, and it just becomes a matter of where we go from there.
absolutely. And so let's just take that train of thought for a second. You've mentioned quite a bit of maybe experiences along the way within your journey so far. So this is really a two-part question. Can you think of, or was there ever a specific point in time or event, key situation in your professional life or career that forced you to take that monumental shift? And it may have been something that you've shared that you might want to elaborate on. And if so, what was the result, positive or painful? How did that situation help you grow?
Most definitely. Well, I think of the last 2+ years as that, an extended
Yep.
version of that sort of pivotal moment of waking up and realizing, in essence, I built a house of cards. And the thing is that I was just always was doing exactly what I thought I was supposed to do, what was expected of me. And it's like, I'm going to check all these boxes. I'm going to execute flawlessly on the professional women's career playbook. I'm going to climb the ladder and everything's going to be great. And then I get to the top. I'm working in this terribly toxic and dysfunctional culture. And I'm looking around just wondering where did the happiness go, or that happiness that seemed to be promised? Why is it not here? Why am I so hollow and discontent? And so it made me really raise a mirror to myself and say, Sarah, what are you prioritizing? What are you actually saying means the most to you in your life right now? And for me, it was my career, and my identity was so wrapped up in that too. So I had to come to a place of going through all of these kind of ups and downs and having these crazy moments to really disentangle my value and my worth from that professional version of me, to even be able to begin to build this new business and talking with other women and my hope is ultimately that model a better way forward in how we relate with our careers, especially for very ambitious, high achieving women. It's a very difficult thing to have to look around and see the rubble of what was supposed to be this pristinely built facade of success. And that really is what changed my trajectory completely.
Wow, there's so much just truth and raw, candid, rip the Band-Aid off
Yes.
moments within that for you. And the fact that you're able to come out on the other side of it, if we, just phrase it that way, and share. So you just allow others to take that moment. They're listening now, wherever they are in their career, or in the home life, or wherever they are in their life, right, in their path, and just really hit the pause button and just enjoy maybe your episode, this one episode. Just re-listen to it, or spend the 30 minutes or so listening to your story so they can help unwind. And I like how you said detangle, because we do put a lot of our identity into maybe what we work on or who we are is as a title. And
Yes.
there's so much more to that, and we know it. It just, we need permission to pause.
Yes. Most
So
definitely.
yeah,
And just to be the human version of ourselves too. I
yeah.
think that has been a big piece of the puzzle too, in that we pre-pandemic had to show up in a very buttoned up, polished way with personal and professional, very compartmentalized. And we had to almost pretend that there was no messiness about us in anything that we did. And then all of a sudden, the pandemic hits. And for a lot of companies where they're shifting to work from home and things like that, we start to see so much more of our coworkers' personal lives. And I think that's a big piece of all of this too, is just owning 100% of our humanity, knowing that our personal selves and our professional selves are not different. They are one in the same, and that we hold so much innate value beyond how we show up at work with a specific title, like you said, and what we can produce for a company or an organization or whatever it is. We hold inherent value just by being just the beautiful humans that we are. And I think coming back to that and always anchoring into that place, first and foremost, we will be better off, because then we're putting the right amount of emphasis on the other aspects of our lives. And it's a beautiful thing. Don't get me wrong. I love to work still, and I love more than ever the work that I'm doing, because this is by far the most fulfilling and rewarding work of my career. And it's not that I don't want to stop working altogether or anything like that. And I know that's true for the women I talk to. It's been interesting where you'll get some pushback sometimes where people will talk about the Great Resignation and how people don't want to work anymore. It's not the case in my scenario or any of the women that I've spoken to. It's just we want work to be right sized in our lives so that we can be whole humans, whole women, with all of the different hats that we wear in all aspects of our lives.
What would you say are perhaps some best tips or best practices that you've learned, both for yourself, with yourself, along with the stories and your interviews with all these women? Best practices to rest or recharge your mindset, especially after maybe some emotionally exhausting situations or difficult projects. Is there anything that you could share?
Definitely. Well, related to rest, it is really about boundaries and carving out that space and time to do things that fill your cup, and just you, regardless of what anybody else thinks you should do for self-care or time for reflection or whatever it is. It's connecting with whatever an activity is, or a time or a space, nature, the beach, meditation, yoga, journaling, could be playing music, anything, whatever it is that lights up your soul, and you feel that sense of expansiveness and fullness and contentment, whatever that is, find that for yourself. And I also think though too that what every woman said during her interview in some way, shape, or form is that she just knew when it was time to walk away from her job. And some women maybe did some mental gymnastics type exercises related to spreadsheets for budgeting or looking at finances or pro con lists or whatever. But that was not what was leading their decisions. It was an inner knowing. And I was just so blown away by this because I'm thinking, well, I was that rational, logical, pragmatic career woman. Everything that you do in your career should be considered in that vein. And you're seeking stability and security and bigger titles, fatter paychecks, awards, prestige, all of these things. But really, when it came down to it, and we've never been taught this related to how we approach our careers or architect our career decisions, it was about coming back to that inner knowing. And I had recently, this time, it coincided very interestingly with my own sort of exploration of my more of that intuitive part of me rather than the logical or cognitive part of me. And I started to see that red thread woven through all of these different interviews. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is so powerful. And this is what we've been missing because to show up in the world of work, and if we think about it, really, workplaces were designed by men for men. And a lot of the ways they traditionally run were with men in mind. And we then kind of slotted in more equally after the Equal Rights Amendment in 1972. And, that's decades ago, but we have been fitting ourselves into the world of work for men for a very long time. And part of that has meant cutting off parts of ourselves that are especially strong as women related to things like our intuition and these EQ based skills that we have that are such gifts, but they're not valued in the workplace the way that mental prowess is. And so I think that's a huge part of this too. I know it's a little bit of a long way to answer your question, but I just want women to realize that you know what's right for you. There is a source of wisdom within you that always knows what the right decision is going to be. So keep coming back to that. Find your connection to that. Cast off all of the shoulds and the opinions of others that can often drown out being able to hear that part of you, but come back to that part always and nurture yourself and you will be fine. You'll be able to make the right decisions.
Sara, where do you turn when you need inspiration?
It's about that slowing down and stillness. And it still is honestly even a little bit uncomfortable for me because I was go, go, go for so long. And I can almost feel a bit of that agitation and anxiety when I don't think I'm producing. So it is giving myself days off. And sometimes even for me, because I'm working on a book right now and have a couple of other things in the works that sometimes I've had to do some work over the weekends to meet deadlines, but then it will be like, I'm going to take a Tuesday off because I need the break. I need to recharge. So I give myself that space and then I'm doing things that really fill me up. And that for me is the beach. It's yoga. I've also tried as of late the floating sensory deprivation tanks, and that is amazing. That is where you get into these floating pods that are filled with Epsom salt water, about 10 inches of that. And I think it's something like 1,000 pounds of Epsom salt that is poured into this water and it makes you really buoyant. So you're actually able to float for an hour and you have earplugs in, there's no lights. You are in an environment in which your senses essentially are deprived, hence the name of it. And what it does then is it allows you just to go really deep in yourself. And it's great for helping with things like meditation. But journaling, anything along those lines, even great friends and finding support from my boyfriend or family or friends. All of those things I didn't do though, Amber. If I'm completely honest, when I was in the throes of working those crazy hours, those were things that always got pushed aside because I just felt like they weren't valuable enough for my time and my value needed to be put into actually producing and doing things. So it's been a big shift just to say those activities have inherent value and are critical to my well-being, and they will be prioritized, and sometimes work will have to take a back seat.
Fabulous. Oh my gosh. Yes. So, if you listen, I'm a note taker. So right now,
Yes.
we are on page 3 of
Love it.
my scribble notes. So, Sarah, we all crave great resources that might help inspire, uplift, expand our minds, or sometimes, like we talked about, just get us through the day. And yes, okay, audience, you heard what she mentioned a second ago. I'm going to take a sec. You have a book that you're working on.
I do. Yes,
Uh-huh.
I
Okay.
do.
So we'll have to make sure that we come back when that's ready to be released, so you can share more. So we'll do a part 2.
I'd love that. I'd love that. That would be
Fantastic.
wonderful.
And then we can ask this question again and you can share your book. So, audience, be paying attention for that announcement from Sarah when the time is right. But do you have a favorite, maybe a genre or a book or resource or mentor or something that you'd like to share with the audience? And if so, what makes it or they a favorite?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'll share a few in a few different lanes because different things have been helpful, and we are so multifaceted. So I do
Yeah.
believe that finding different elements or different leaders or sources of inspiration across the different aspects of our lives is really powerful. So in the realm of women empowerment and learning how to really step into who you're meant to be and to shun a lot of this kind of old school women conditioning. It's Tara Moore, and her book Playing Big is amazing. I think she really was the pioneer in this space of allowing us to embody more of that logical, pragmatic approach to careers, but then also blending in more of the softer elements of us, like intuition. And then in writing and creativity and fear, I really love Elizabeth Gilbert and her work in the book Big Magic. That's been really huge for me. With leadership, huge fan of Brene Brown. I also did her Dare to Lead course earlier this year, and that is all about how, in order to be a daring leader, we have to lead from a place of vulnerability, and that being vulnerable always requires courage. And I think there's just such a powerful message in that. And then I also love to Michael Singer's book, The Surrender Experiment. And this was a big one for me because I always came from that place of having the the plan, the roadmap, the playbook, all of the things. And it made me very uncomfortable to deviate from it. I felt like I had to white knuckle my way through whatever it was I was trying to do or achieve. And his book is really about surrendering and letting go and letting life unfold in ways that can often be beyond our wildest dreams rather than when we're just striving and trying to contrive certain outcomes. And so that's been really powerful as well.
Excellent, excellent. And we will provide all of those books and resources for the audience to go check out and take a look at that because a couple of those I've not heard of. And so now I am intrigued.
All right,
Super
wonderful.
excited. I love that.
Yes.
Love that. Okay, milady, I am watching the clock here, and it has been I don't have words right now. You've rendered me speechless a couple of times and just listening, which is just my mind is you've got it just reeling in a great way. In a great way, it has been so amazing and inspiring, uplifting, all of those things that we could think of to say, but really at a grounding level. So I know that sounds like a complete contradiction. But you've got me so jazzed about grounding a little bit more for myself.
Love it.
Guilty,
Yes.
guilty pleasure connecting with you today. And thank you for spending time and sharing what you're doing, what you're continuing to do, and sharing a little bit about your personal silhouette of success journey. So, milady, as we begin to wrap up today in keeping the promise to share intentional inspiration with the audience, is there a piece or one piece of go to advice that sticks with you or that you'd like to share with us?
Well, the first will be to come back home to you. every chance you get in some way or shape or form every single day, find a way to connect back with yourself in the stillness. I just deeply believe that we as women have all of the answers that we need within ourselves. We've been taught to outsource our agency and power and often look to external sources to tell us what we should do or what's right for us. And I just deeply believe you already know. So start building that connection and keep coming home to you. And then I'll end with this quote that I really love by Joseph Campbell, who did his work and research as a professor at Sarah Lawrence College in The Hero's Journey, which is mapping the archetype of the hero that we see across mythology and cultures in thousands of years, this approach to how we kind of go on a hero's journey to grow in our lives. And one of his quotes is that the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. And so when you're feeling that fear or that nudge or that kind of like that sensation of, I think there's something in there for me, or I should move in that direction, but I'm really scared, know that that is often a light guiding your way to lead you to bigger and better things on your path. And don't ignore that call is what I would say.
Awesome. As expected. Anticipated. All right, milady, the stage is completely yours. Where can our audience go to find or connect with you on your socials and support you in your continued success?
Well, I love speaking with other women related to their experiences in this space. And so if it's that you are a member of the Great Resignation and you're interested in sharing your story, that is amazing. I will tell you, I've had nearly an equal number of women that I've connected with on this project that were not members of the Great Resignation, but just want to talk about these things. And I welcome all of those connections as well. My website is raze2rise.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram. I'm Sara J. McElroy on both.
Outstanding. And I will make sure that we include your contact information and then your website and all of those things in the resource section above all of these books, so our audience can go find you and follow and watch what you're doing for all of us. So, all right, milady, it has been, again, a guilty pleasure for me because I've got so many notes to go back and just reflect on, incorporate best practices that you've shared.
I love it.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your silhouette of success with us. You are a genuine light and true inspiration.
Thank you, Amber. I love being here, given that we both are in this same space of sharing out stories of amazing women. So thank you for building this amazing community and platform as well. I'm honored to be here.
Outstanding. All right, milady. Until part 2, talk to you soon.
Indeed.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Silhouettes of Success podcast. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on all the new episodes. We are here for you and with you. We encourage you to share this podcast on all your socials and pass on the light to help illuminate another silhouette of success. To find out the latest ways to inspire your heart, ignite your mind, and gain actionable insights, subscribe at thesilhouettesofsuccess.com or connect with us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. We're grateful that you tuned in. Remember, you are exactly where you need to be, right here with us. This is the Amber Weitzer podcast, Silhouettes of Success.